This week, Parshas Achrei, the Torah speaks about the sons of Aharon that went into the Kodesh HaKadoshim and they experienced such a divine ecstasy. They went into such a lofty state that they lost their desire to return to their bodies. And so the HaKodesh speaks about this in detail. How does a human being get into a state like that? How could it be possible that a person would forget the people, the pleasures, the habits of life and be able to go so deeply within the spiritual, so deeply within that essence of thought that you would be overpowered by a desire to cling to a source, to go back to the root, to reunite with his Father. And this relates to the basic understanding that we have about what it means to be us. Where are we clinging? Where do we think is our salvation? Where do we think can we find some type of strength, some type of power in order to realize ourselves, in order to calm down that thing, whatever it might be, that is so actively searching in us, that is so uncalm, that is so insecure. And this element within us that's so insecure is called ruach, is called spirit. So the Sefer Yetzira, when it describes the 10 divine sefirot that create life, so the first one is ruach, spirit. That ruach is not the ruach that we have access to, although we have access to it also. It's the prototype, ruach the prototype. Ruach, the infinite potential that can be all spirits. And then when we breathe in a spirit, we're already getting an individual spirit. We're getting a specific one. Hopefully it doesn't have anything terrible on it, physically or any other way. So when we breathe in a spirit, it's an individual spirit that we have a big variety of things we can do with. But then there is the prototype of spirit, the ultimate spirit, the spirit that can be all spirits, the spirit within all spirits. And that's the life force, that's the undifferentiated life force that is present everywhere. Without that, there's no life. And so, Reb Tzodok from Worms, who has a parish on the Sefer Yetzira, he says that he received the following names to help us identify the 3 parts of our spirit that are present within. There are portions of our spirit that are so deep, that are so undifferentiated, that we cannot say that it ever resides within the body. We can say that the one within the body has annihilated himself to such a degree that he's tapping into that ever-present surrounding light. But to reside within the body means that there's somebody within there that has some form of identity. And then there's 3 levels called nefesh, ruach, and neshama. So he says nefesh, to identify it. The name that was given to him was tava, desire. Tava even has a connotation of lust. So the part of the spirit that resides within the body, it has desire because it's resting. How does it lose its desire? When we make it move. When we make it busy, then it doesn't have time. But when it's resting, it's in a state of desire. That's why Shabbos, where we have Vayinofash, we go into the nefesh, and then we have we have neshama yesera, we have more desire, we can eat and we can enjoy. So that's because the nefesh is rested, the nefesh is more ready for experience. If the nefesh is upset, then she's not ready to enjoy, then she's not in that state, then she can't handle the same amount of food or the same amount of enjoyment. It can become even an irritation. So that's the part of the nefesh that's within the body. The ruach, the spirit, he calls that roiges. It seems like these are like the negative sides. If that part of the nefesh is not properly tuned, why does he call it ruach roiges? Because ruach is the part that's always moving, always changing. It's always variable. It's like when our thoughts are jumping from one thing to the other, it's because the ruach is not calm, the ruach is not steady. And that's why if we stable our breath, we can help our ruach regulate itself. We can help our mind get a more steady thought pattern going. And that will help us find calm. So the ruach is roiges. It's always angry at something, it would seem. It's always fighting with something. It's always challenging something. It's always arguing with something. It's constantly in movement. It can't rest. Only if we really train ourselves. And how can we train ourselves? By going to the neshama. The neshama is the one that's in charge of the ruach. So if we have good contact with our neshama, then the ruach will calm down. If we've lost contact with our neshama, then the ruach is mole roiges. He's always angry at something, he's busy, he's jumping, he's blaming the whole world. And really, it has nothing to do with the whole world. It's something inside. Even if we take away the whole world, still there wouldn't be quiet in there. So the neshama is called hirur. Hirur means the reflection that is behind thought. So thought is already, when we see an image within our mind, and that's the result of our heart having a hearer. Our heart is giving us some form of a signal that's beyond thought, and it comes into the mind and it becomes thought. So that signal that is before thought is called hirhur. So that reflects the neshama, that reflects the inner intelligence that's causing the thought to become what it is. So with these levels, he describes the internal essence that lives. Obviously, no words can describe the internal essence that lives. Words are things, little vessels, that the thing that lives uses in order to express itself. And the words also resemble the combinations of energies that the Creator used in order to create life, in order to create humanity, in order to create animals. So words represent life. That's why it says, B'dvar Hashem Shemayim Nase, with the words of Hashem, of the Spirit, of the Ruach, the heavens get created. So this is in the higher heavens, and in the ones where we see the big stars that were created by the desire of the wisdom to create this platform for us. And then we see it internally, that all the things that were said to us, those words are still standing within our heavens and are still controlling us. They're still within our system, and they live on as that part of us that interacts with life. It's like a screen between us and life, the words that we've recorded inside our spirit. So this is also represented by the Aleph, which is, it has a Yud on top, a Yud on bottom, and the Vav in the middle. So the Vav in the middle is called the Rakia. The Rakia is the barrier, the firmament between the heaven and the earth. So when we think of ourselves, there's the conscious part that thinks, that's the lower Yud. Then there's the Rakia. The Rakia is the words. And then there's the higher Yud. The higher Yud is the real self that's trying to come down. It's trying to manifest. So we have a Vav, we have a interpretation of words standing between the conscious mind and the unconscious that's trying to know itself. So it mirrors each other, but not exactly. And that really depends on that vav. On the vav is represented by the Rekiah, which is represented by the Torah. How pure, how real is that Torah? Does it really reflect back the truth, or is it not interpreting reality correctly? So when a person realizes the proper reflection, only then does he start getting drawn to that source. When he realizes how good everything is, besides what people created, he starts feeling that attraction towards the perfection that the Creator created. Like, why do I need to be busy with what people made? It's just getting in the way. Let me just see what He made, and that's it. And so that develops into an appetite for wisdom, because the more the mind is consumed with wisdom, the more it's living in that reality that is divine, in that reality that was created for us. That's our environment. That's our natural environment. So culture has distracted us from this lack of understanding and gotten us busy with things external so that we don't notice. And this is why we constantly need to entertain ourselves in order to relieve boredom, in order to make life interesting, in order to feel some emotions. So really, in our culture, we might call it entertainment, but really in the true nature of things, it should be called distraction. You're not looking for entertainment, you're looking for a distraction. Why do you need to be distracted? Because your brain should be feeling a certain interaction with life that it's not feeling. You feel the mundane life and it doesn't fulfill anything. So now we need to fill that void with someone else's hallucinations or with some stimulation that's going to give our brain the feeling as if we're living in an interesting life, even though we don't think we are. And that's because we don't know which life we're living. We haven't noticed. We haven't had the time. But the experience of life itself should be more than fulfilling enough that we should never need to be distracted. We should never need to be entertained. We only need entertainment because something is broken, something is wrong. And then we need to distract ourselves because we can't feel this emptiness forever. It's just not good for us. It's not healthy. So let's think about this, let's think about that. Let's be busy here, let's be busy there. And in the meantime, precious days, weeks, months, and years are passing. And this is our life, this is our everything. So when we realize the depth of the relationship, we start celebrating that relationship. We start gaining a desire to interact with that perfection. We're tired of human imperfection. We want the divine perfection. And the divine perfection is everywhere. We are the biggest statement of divine perfection. A human being, just by standing there, is the biggest demonstration of divine perfection. We shouldn't need anything more than that. It's only because we're so steeped in our imagination, we're so distant from reality, we so don't realize the magnificence of what's taking place, that we look at a human being and we're like, okay, I've seen it before, next. And not only that, we're not only talking about somebody looking at another human being, living inside a human being. How can we overlook that? We're living inside a body that we don't even understand how it works. We just know that it does. And we're thinking for it. But we don't use our thinking to figure out how it works. We use our thinking to get toys. So something is out of balance over here. Something is not right. Somebody's lost their head. And it might be me. So life has become all about distraction. Life has become all about what's happening outside of us. But as soon as life is about what's happening outside of us, we lose all control. We can't control what's outside of us. We never could. The human being wasn't built to be able to control what's outside of him. If he's lucky, if he dedicates his life to it, he might be able to control what's inside of him. But what's outside, nobody can control. Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't control what's outside of him. So as soon as we get trained that we need to control what's outside, we're going to be measured based on what's outside, then we start running, and we don't stop until it's too late. And we're constantly trying to get there finally, get to that destination that doesn't exist. It's just an imagination, it's just an image. It's words. It's all painted on the rakia. It's painted on the firmament. It's not really real. So what's inside of us is who we are. That's what we bring to the table. And who we are is everything, because that decides which world we're going to exist in. Which reality are we going to perceive and make it our home? So what's inside of us is everything. And we have to take the lessons we can learn about the wisdom of the Creator from the outside to teach us about how He must have imagined the inside. If you see a beautiful car that's been designed meticulously, and everything is in its perfect place, and you can only see the exterior, would you assume that the inside, the guy is just sitting on a plastic pail and his steering wheel is a broken broomstick? Probably not. You would assume that the inside is as comfortable and as meticulously designed, if not more, to be suitable to the driver, so that the driver can have the appropriate experience of driving that car. What would be the point of investing so much in what it looks like and how it operates if the driver cannot have the experience, if when he's sitting in there, it doesn't feel right? And so apply that same logic to a human being. A human being has been designed meticulously. A human being has been perfectly coordinated so that everything works exactly the way that it's supposed to. So why would we assume that when it comes to our experience, there he did a lousy job, there he misunderstood our needs, there he somehow created wrong, and we just have to suffer it? There's something faulty in this thinking. We can only come to these conclusions because we've bought into the theory that life is mundane, that it doesn't make a difference, that there's no divinity to nature. Nature just is. Who cares? Boring. Give us a show or something. Let's entertain ourselves. And so life lost its sacredness, life lost its divinity. And this happened specifically in ancient Greece. The Greek philosophers, they somehow saw life as being boring, as being mundane, as like, who cares? Okay, we can figure out how it works, and this is how it works, okay. Not that they really figured out how it works, obviously, because the part that's alive within nature, they couldn't explain. But they took away the sacredness. The pagans at least understood that life is sacred. The Greeks didn't understand that life is sacred. And so they needed shows. They needed colosseums. They needed wars. They needed to make life interesting. Why, you're just going to live through it and just let it happen and that's it and then it's over? Like, what would even be the point? You got to make it interesting. You got to do something. You got to conquer somebody. You got to. So life took on the opposite connotation. Instead of everybody being after peace, suddenly everybody's after stimulation. Suddenly it's all about the senses. There's nothing else. Who cares? It's just happened. It happened to be that you happen to be. What do you want? Just let it happen and get it over with. Why make a fuss? So life lost its value. And when life loses its value, the human brain goes out of balance. The human brain is no longer motivated to live the way that it used to be. The human brain is designed to live in a world that's sacred. Everything that it does is meaningful and consequential, because that's the truth. That's why our brain was designed to see life from that perspective, because that's the truth. That every word we say is consequential, more than we can ever imagine. We're limited by the amount of information we understand about what's real. But reality is not limited. Every word I say now will live on for eternity. There's no doubt and there's no question. In me and in all of you and in our children. Because something changed now that you heard these words. And that makes them sacred because it goes into the very source of life. It goes into the very divine intelligence that decides what's going to happen next. So the sacredness of life gives the human brain energy. It understands the importance and therefore it acts in accordance with that importance. But when it doesn't understand the importance, it's like, leave me alone. What do you want from me? I don't want to do anything. I don't care. I don't have any energy to carry myself. You want me to care about others? And this all has to do with how we understand what's our perspective, what's happening over here. If somebody's in war and he's woken up drastically in the middle of his sleep, he has to run, he runs. He doesn't complain. Why'd you wake me up? He runs because now it's war. He understands it's important. He does it. But when we have in our lives different things that happen to us, we don't understand that we're in war. We don't understand how important these events are. So we just say, leave me alone. I want to sleep. I want to do this. I want to do that. I'm not in the mood. We forget what life is. Life is a big deal. Of course you're in the mood. You're always in the mood for life. This is what you came for. This is why you went through all the trouble. 9 months in the womb. The whole birth thing. The whole childhood thing. Remember, this is important. A lot is invested that this should go right. So when a person comes back to reality, he receives energy. It gives him life. And this life is always available. It's in the oxygen. It's been there waiting for you the whole time. You've been breathing it. You just have to learn how to unpack the gift, how to make the most of it. How do we keep a brain clean from negative influences so that it wants to live? Because if it will want to live, it will live. That's the only requirement. It needs to want to do so before it will get access. So we have to figure out, how do we make it want to do so? Because that's going to be the source of intelligence. That's going to be the source of its drive to become whatever it's going to become, to fulfill that destiny that it was created for. So that we can finally see what a human being looks like. What is it really about? Because there's a truth to all of these things. We're so far from the truth that it seems to us like it's all fairy tales and stories, mythologies, interesting people and interesting stories, but there's no real underlying truth. But there must be an underlying truth. Look at how it was designed. Look at what's taking place. Of course, there's an underlying truth. It's been hidden from us. They didn't trust us with it for whatever reason. People knew this truth. People would never be able to do what they did if they didn't know some form of a truth. You can't be too powerful if you don't rely on the truth. You fall apart in the first difficulty, and the whole nervous system starts crumbling if we don't have some solid truth to rely on. So big people, big truth. And then people manipulate the truth. People use the truth in the wrong ways. And then the truth gets hidden. There's a piece of Zohar here. It talks about calling names. This relates to the power of speech, the power of words. But in general, all of us are born and we have a name. We received a name. So a name has a spiritual power because the one thinking relates to himself in his own name. And then he sees that name in different contexts, and he sees different associations with that name. So this creates a lot of unconscious prophecies, unconscious behaviors that relate to the type of person he thinks that name represents. And that's why it's a very powerful spiritual energy that we give to the child when we give them a name. We're really connecting them to something that's going to give structure to how they think of themselves, which is the most important relationship, like we've discussed. And so he says, the pasuk says, Vayikra Yakov, Ma kriya hocha. Why is he calling? He says, Ele kriya lekayme dichtai. Calling, when you call a name, it's in order to keep a space, in order to save a concept, in order to create a reality. You call a name. When you call a name, you're creating a relationship. You're creating something with that place that is more permanent. So when he calls a name, we see this in the Torah a lot, that people, Avraham Avinu and Yaakov, they went to different places and they called it names. Many of those names we still use till today. So these names, they are to hold the spiritual value, to hold the spiritual content. Also, when we pass, it says that we want to make sure to remember our name so that we can remember who we are, because obviously the context of existence changes very drastically. So in that transition, if we were only busy with external things and suddenly everything is internal, then we might completely forget what we represent. We might forget who we even thought to be. So this is to keep a place. To keep it, to give it existence above and below, meaning in the spiritual realms and in the conscious mind. Calling a name is like this. That Moshe called him a new name. Why did he call him a new name? To hold his place in the place where it needed to be, and to time up to it. That when he called his name Yaakov, that he gave it a certain meaning. He said, that after Esav, first comes Esav's leadership, and then after Esav comes Yaakov on the heels of Esav. HaKadosh Baruch Hu called the place where Yaakov was makriv the carbon, the force that is the divine nature of Israel. So it says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted to hold that place, meaning Yaakov went into such a high state that he completely overcame all his enemies within, all the angels that he was struggling with were under his rule. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted to give reality to that state. He wanted to make it real. He wanted to make it last. And so he called that place El Elahei Yisrael. This is the force that showed the divine nature of Yaakov, who we now call Yisrael. That you are more powerful than the humans, and you're also more powerful than the angels that create your experience. You can master them as well. So he's saying, if you want to ask me, where it says that they called to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. When we call to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so he said maybe that wouldn't make sense to say that it's in order to save a place, in order to give a kiyum, in order to give life and existence to a place, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't obviously need our existence. He has existence before us. So why are we calling to him? So he says, no, this is also the same concept. It says, you're not calling him because he needs your existence. You're calling him because you need existence. By you calling him, you show that you know where your force is coming from, that you understand what your power is. If you don't understand your power, then you can't turn towards the Creator. You're turning towards different things. You think other things are Other things are somehow going to save you. And so only when you can realize where your true salvation lies, only then can you call to the divinity, can you call to source, can you really apply yourself in prayer. And that gives life to you. That gives a standing to you. Now you're called in his name. So he says, one who gives praise to his master, and he does all the right things that his master needs. He gives existence to his master. He shows that he knows who is the power in the world and who is not. He understands where does real force come from and where do all the other random things come from that don't have any existence of their own. They're all taking existence from the same source. So we have to be able to go back to understanding that relationship correctly, because when we do that, he says he gives existence to his master, meaning his neshama can now have life because he understood the nature of how life is received. He understood life is received from within. So he went within, he looked for something stable within. He didn't search externally that the situation should change. He realized that it's within the settings within that the trouble is. So then he gives power to his neshama. His neshama is being realized as what it really is. It's not being controlled by remote control through other people and through other things, through the senses. So the brain is not running after the senses. The brain understands. It needs to have a good relationship with the heart. It needs to have a good relationship with reality. It needs to have a good relationship with the ruach. It doesn't need any specific stimulations in order to be okay. It can be okay. So when the spirit can realize the internal root of its salvation, through that internal root, the neshama has access to the divine Father, the infinite wisdom that creates life. The wisdom, the Chachmei Elah, the Father of life, the one, the intelligence that created everything that is. So your neshama has access to that intelligence. In fact, every time that you ask yourself a question in your mind, you're asking from the infinite intelligence through the lens of your neshama. And the answer that comes through that intelligence to the extent that you have access to it. So that's the life force. That's the life within life. That's something the Greeks weren't even busy with because they didn't even realize that they were that. They were too busy with their senses. They got distracted. They started measuring everything besides the most important place, the source, the one that's experiencing it all. So this turning back, it gives existence. Until then, your neshama doesn't have existence. Yes, it exists. It's keeping your entire body running, but it doesn't have access to the brain. So what does it really have? It's keeping the body running for something else, for some other interest. So the person has to reclaim his understanding of who does he work for? What's the goal? What's the purpose? And that gives existence to the one that lives inside of him. Finally, he's going to be realized. Finally, he's going to be acknowledged. That's his existence. Before that, he didn't exist. The Arizal, the Beit HaYakov, shows that within him, everything depends. There's no other place. When you think it's any other place, that's already a form of idol worship. Now you're making your life, you're making your experience dependent on things that are not under your control. You lost access to life. So as soon as we place that condition, that's a form of Elohim Acherim. That's a form of otherness within our divinity. And now the spirit that lives inside of us can no longer be as friendly to us as it wants to. And this is how Chazal say, what is a strange God that can live within the body of a human being? This is the evil inclination, the one that draws the evil images. That's a other God, a God that makes HaKadosh Baruch Hu jealous. HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't like it when other gods live inside our bodies. HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves our bodies. He wants to be the only one that gets to enter and exit. He doesn't want any other force in there. When there's otherness, HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't have the clean access that he deserves. Because we are busy with other things. We're busy with a universe that doesn't exist currently. We're in an alternative universe where things happen differently than the reality that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created. So now he can't access into our bodies and he gets jealous. He's an Elkanah. Because there's only so much life. How long are you going to live already? You don't have that much time. He wants all the time with you he can have. And every age is a different experience. He doesn't want to lose any part of that experience. So he's an Elkanah. He gets very jealous. He gets upset. He gets angry. Why are you busy with silly things? Don't you realize I created you and I created you perfectly and I want to have that relationship? And I'm inside of you right now, allowing you to think. Don't you realize that I'm important also? So when a person realizes that, he gives power to the spirit that lives inside of him. He gives power to the spirit that runs all spirits. And then everything can stand. Yakov called his children before he gave them the blessings. He gave them life, he gave them existence by expressing his view of them, by expressing how he saw them and giving them different correlations and different associations with the animals and the plants and different words. So he created for them a levush, he created for them a dress that lives on till this very day. If I want to know who was Reuben, who was Shimon, who was Levi, who was Yehuda, because they represent parts of my body, I need to know. They represent parts of my spirit. They represent part of the conversation that's happening in my head, even right now. So now I have the blessings and I can go back and I can learn about them. I can understand them more deeply. So, Vayikra Yaakov el Banov, he called them. How did he call them? He gave them life. He gave them existence. Kiyam lem b'kiyam shlem k'gavanda vayikra el Moshe. It's kaim b'kiyimei. That he gave him existence. He gave him life. Yeah, okay, so we'll finish here.